I'd like to acknowledge all of our online guests and thank you so much to all of you for making the effort this morning in joining us in discussing an interesting and also topical subject. Specifically, I'd like to acknowledge and recognize the three guests we have as online experts this morning. Firstly, Mr. Amit Ramdath from AutonoSky, entrepreneur, engineer, and CEO of AutonoSky. Mr. Anas Al-Hamati, who is the Deputy Director of Gift of the Givers Foundation, and Mr. Johan Minnie, Manager of and Head of Centre at the City of Cape Town Disaster Risk Management Centre. I'd also like to just acknowledge my director, Dr. Rudy Kimmy, as well as Professor Henry Wissink, who are online this morning. And also thanks to the background team of Ayanda and Hazel. Thank you so much for setting everything up. And I'm confident that this morning's session will be a success. So for many of you, the Aerotropolis Institute might be a new organization. You might not have heard of us before, and we might be a bit of an unknown entity. And part of the reason that we're hosting these sessions is to actually put out into the public the work that the AIA is doing. So our core focus is through consulting, research and teaching is to promote airport cities, aviation and associated economies related to airport cities, advanced aerial technology, renewable energy, and as importantly, how we can overcome South Africa's dual economy and how we can empower impoverished and marginalized communities to becoming more central and included into the aviation sector in South Africa. Today, we're going to be talking about how advanced aerial technology will be changing our lives in the near future. And specifically, we're going to be looking at how this element of fourth industrial revolution technology can have a transformative impact on how we avoid, mitigate, monitor, and manage both human and natural disasters. So perhaps some of the questions that might arise out of today's discussion is how can technology be more effectively deployed when managing disasters? What have we learned from the likes of the floods in KwaZulu-Natal, the collapsed building in George, and the earthquake in Turkey? How do we deploy technology to manage not just short-term high-impact threats, but also those that evolve over a longer period of time, such as global warming, the desertification of our planet, deforestation, and the shrinking of polar caps, for example? Could sniffer dogs, could sniffer drones be used to detect body heat, methane, or carbon dioxide? Can high-altitude pseudo-satellites not be used to expand our communication networks within short notice? And can drones not be deployed to mapping disaster areas such as crash sites for aircraft? So today's session is not just about only listening to our guest speakers, but we're also wanting to and inviting those of you who are online to submit questions. And I will be monitoring the Q&A section of on the online platform and posing those questions back to the speakers at the end of our QA session this morning. And so we're inviting all of you that are online to participate in our online dialogues as far as the AIA is concerned. So just by way of concluding, before I hand over to our first speaker, Amit Ramdath, please remember to post your questions in the chat box, and we will have a Q&A session at the end of this morning's session. We've got 10 minutes that is allowed for that. And what we will do is we will record the session this morning and we'll place it up onto our website and Facebook page for those of you who want to re-watch this morning's session or might have missed part of it. And we'll also be sending out the PowerPoint presentations from the various speakers to all the people that are online this morning. So we're starting now. We're going to finish at 10:30, and each speaker is given about 20 minutes to present. And I will be pretty brutal as far as the program is concerned. but I will give you a warning once you get to the end of your time slot. So we're going to run through it. We're going to start off with Amit. We're then going to move on to Anas. And then from there, we're going to move on to Johan from the city of Cape Town. So without much further ado, Amit, if I may hand over to you for the first speaker slot.
Awesome. Can you see the presentation there, Brad?
Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome. Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. To our hosts, thank you for inviting me to join this very esteemed panel. It truly is an honor to be speaking on this panel today. And yeah, I'm going to, let's see if I can get this. Here we go. Okay, cool. So today I'll be speaking to you on the role of drones in disaster management and emergency response. And to do this, I decided that today I will try to liken the capabilities of drones to something that most of us are familiar with, and that is superheroes. And maybe to start, I want you to imagine that you are in the midst of a disaster, maybe an earthquake, and just think about, as the ground stops rumbling, what everything would look like. You know, you in the middle of debris, there's echoes of help and screaming. And imagine you hear this hum, and it's our superhero, a very capable drone coming in to help. And the reason why I thought we'll go that way is because really drones do have superpowers. And maybe if I can just look at some of them and try to bring them into certain scenarios, it will help us see why we look at drones as a very important tool in mitigating disasters moving forward. And I think first up, the one thing about drones, the one power is super speed. And this comes from drones being able to be deployed very quickly, and also to reach where they need to reach very quickly, because they have the advantage of traveling in a straight line. The other super speed factor comes from their ability to relay real-time data. And in any emergency or disaster, time is of the essence. So super speed is definitely one of the first ones we need to be looking at. The next superpower is flight. As you all know, during a disaster, one of the problems is that infrastructure is interrupted or damaged or destroyed. And this is where flight comes in, where terrestrial means become very difficult to reach the scene. Flight can be very useful to overcome any of the damage that may have been caused by the disaster. Then we can look at invulnerability. You know, during disasters, there's also many instances where it becomes dangerous for first responders themselves to go to the edges of the disaster for many reasons. And this is also where drones can be built to withstand some very harsh conditions. And I'll discuss some of these scenarios later that might also add some clarity on this. Next up is the power of shape-shifting. Now, what I'm talking about here is drones' ability to carry different payloads. Imagine you land a drone, you change the payload, now it can do something completely different. And I have a few examples of payloads that we've been working on towards the end of my presentation. And hopefully that will also inspire some thinking around the different applications of drones. The next one is teleportation. Now, we've seen it many times, especially in the Western Cape, when the weather gets bad and we experience floods and roads are washed away, and actually little towns can get cut off. And the ability to teleport supplies or medical supplies or food or water or comms devices into the affected areas become very challenging without this type of technology. And the last one that I'll cover today is X-ray vision. And what I'm talking about here is not real X-ray vision, but Drones equipped with the correct sensors and cameras have the ability to see through dust and smoke and, look at heat signatures and do a lot more than the human eye is capable of. So try to keep these superpowers in mind as we explore some of the scenarios. First one for me to discuss is search and rescue. And the thing about search and rescue operations is that you usually need to get there very quickly, and you need to find the people you are trying to look for. And the two powers of drones over here, super speed and X-ray vision, their ability to go very quickly into places that are traditionally maybe difficult to reach by foot or by car, and then to use their sensors, like, for example, thermal sensors, to identify heat signatures of humans in the area. The other use of drones in the search and rescue orientation is to guide rescue teams. So when the drone is up in the air and has identified where the rescue team needs to be, can also provide the situational awareness, even things like the best route to get there, or any challenges that they may experience, and maybe a helicopter needs to be deployed. Let's move on. The next one is delivery of emergency supplies, and looking at teleportation and flight here as a superpowers. And as I said earlier, drones have the amazing ability to overcome damaged infrastructure, and we can pack even multiple things into a drone payload. When you think about some of the drone deliveries happening in the world, like with Amazon and Google Wing and Walmart and these guys, the same kind of technology becomes really useful in disaster management when you need to deliver emergency supplies. There are some limitations that we are overcoming at the moment, but the main thing is that we can deliver supplies very quickly using this technology. One of the ones that we are quite passionate about is actually wildfire monitoring. And this is an interesting one. There's so many places in the world that struggle with wildfires and the disasters emerging from wildfires. In the Western Cape, we are no stranger to this type of disaster. And the problem with wildfires is that they usually start in hard to reach places. And so you can imagine getting there quickly, overcoming terrain. These sound like exactly the things drones are good at. And there's two parts to wildfire monitoring and mitigation. The first part is to do some fire spotting and try to pick up fires that are happening earlier. Drones are cheaper to fly than manned aircraft, and there's some really good technology emerging in the space for fire spotting. In fact, we are working in the CSIR with one of them, and I'll go into a little bit of detail on that sensor a little bit later. The other advantage of drones is that they can fly at night. So, if the fire is raging and lots of the manned aircraft need to be grounded because lots of them do not have ratings to fly at night, drones can continue operating, identifying hotspots and providing the situational awareness for the ground teams. And okay, let's move to the next one, which is flood monitoring and assessment. And during floods, it's so difficult to get to affected areas, and sometimes people are stranded in waterlogged areas. It's just impossible to get to. One of the stories I really liked is from the World Food Program, where they use drones to gain better resource management. Because previously, during certain floods, they would send the helicopters to look for people that were stranded. And often by the time the helicopter spots people, they're running low on fuel and cannot complete the mission safely, so they have to go back and refuel. And by the time they return to the scene, the people have moved on to a different spot. And what they started doing is using drones to actually find people who are stranded, and then sending the location to the helicopter dispatch, so helicopters could go straight and rescue the people that were stranded. And you can imagine drones also provide real-time data, a bird's eye view of what's happening. It makes resource management and situational awareness a lot easier, a lot more achievable, and a lot more efficient. The other thing that happens sometimes in a disaster is the disruption of communication lines. And recently, or maybe not so recently even, drones started playing a role in restoring communications during disasters. Using tethered solutions, drones can stay up in the air for hours. And they can carry payloads that could be Wi-Fi or cellular repeaters or relays, restoring the network in the area. And this is really important because in really bad cases, the comms has deteriorated to the extent that the first responders are struggling to coordinate between themselves. So putting this kind of capability back into play is really a game changer and really aids the ability to save lives. And perhaps maybe a different one on communication is drones can also carry a kind of a loud hailer, where, as you get to stranded people or survivors, you have the ability to assure them that help is on its way. We know where you are, and just reduce the panic and hopefully reduce unnecessary deaths or basically results of panic. And then I'll quickly just touch on maybe radiation and chemical surveillance. I spoke about drones being invulnerable. And this is, there are examples of each of these scenarios that I've described of real disasters where drones have been deployed. And in Japan, during the, I don't remember which year it was, but the nuclear disaster, they used drones equipped with sensors to measure the amount of radioactivity. And this is typically something that's really hazardous for humans to do. Even with hazmat suits and everything, the risk is really, really high. And drones can be used in radiation and chemical disasters to go in, get measurements, assess the situation without putting humans at risk. It's really an important scenario for drones to be deployed. And the last scenario, I just want to maybe throw in here before I go into some of the things we're working with actually, is damage assessment and mapping. So it's not only about what drones can do in the immediate aftermath of a disaster, it's also about how they can help repair what has been done. And especially when it comes to damage assessment and infrastructure assessment, these are things that drones are used for on a normal day. They can, they can make assessments, be used for mapping and that kind of thing. And then infrastructure inspection is happening all the time. And the aim is really to get communities and families restored to their natural lives after disasters. And this is also where drones play a role. So at Autonomous Sky, which is the company that I founded and that I represent, we really understand the immense potential of drone technology, and we've kind of dedicated the main chunk of our focus to drones for good technology. And so I'd like to share with you a little bit about what we are actually developing. We are based in Cape Town and Pardon Island. If anybody finds us interesting, you're more than welcome to drop us a line. We'll arrange a visit and you can see what we are doing over here. But one of the things that we noticed is that, in disasters, off-the-shelf drones are not necessarily going to do everything. I think, when it comes to camera sensors, it's very easy to buy a drone off the shelf and get that data. But to do more than that, we wanted a drone that could lift heavier, fly longer. So we went about developing a drone. This is Autono 1. It's a drone that is approved by the Civil Aviation Authority of South Africa. And And we are very proud of this drone. It can lift up about 30 kilograms, well, kgs of payload, and also fly for in excess of 1 hour. It is a multi-payload drone, so it can carry more than one payload, and payloads can be swapped out. Here's some of the payloads we've been working on. This is a fire retardant ball dropper. I spoke about fires starting in hard to reach places, and the idea behind this was to fly up to the fire while it's still relatively small and start trying to extinguish it with these balls. These balls have a small detonator in them, and they would spread about 4 square meters of fire retardant once they are detonated. And we could carry multiple of these balls and get to hard to reach places. And if we don't extinguish the fire, at least buy some time. Next up, this is a winch system. This winch we designed is probably the best prototype in the world, or the best example in the world. It is in use by the Institute of Maritime Technology. This winch can lift package up to 15 kgs. We've upgraded it since the slides, and we've found a few efficiencies, and we've tested it. So this will go onto a tonneau one. And this can be very useful for moving items during a disaster from one responder team to the next, or from one responder team to where it needs to be. The hook at the bottom can be replaced with a smart claw, making it really easy to use. This is just a prototype of a delivery mechanism. We have a much slicker version in progress at the moment, but we always start by prototyping, and this typically can take a payload of about 25 kgs and deliver it very much in your Amazon delivery type of scenario. But we feel it has massive potential in the disaster management space. This is a sensor that we've been working with the CSIR on, and we've spent a lot of time. This is the sensor is called the K-line sensor, and K in the periodic table stands for potassium. And during vegetation fires, there's a high amount of alkali potassium that's burnt. This sensor has the ability to recognize the light signature of potassium burning. We've been testing it with some astonishing results. These are some images. The one on the right, I think, is more impressive. All of the fuzziness there are actually the treetop canopies of where we were testing. We had 2 fires. One was in a rocket stove, which is a 15 centimeter by 15 centimeter opening. And from 120 meters, we could accurately detect the fire. It's a pretty remarkable sensor that I think will be a game changer in the future for fire spotting. And then lastly, I've got here a platform that we developed. It's a platform to stream live video from drones. The thing about this platform is that the streaming is very close to real time. It's less than half a millisecond different. We worked a lot with the Metro EMS Cape Town when we developed this, because we noticed that on their search and rescue operations, the amount of real estate on the drone controller screen was very limited. And even when they had a bigger screen on site, there was a lot going on. And this platform has given them the ability to stream the content to the operations center or to any other parties that either need to assist with the search or help to manage the ground teams for situational awareness. The cool thing about this platform is that we are building computer vision in here to assist the first responders in identifying the objects of interest. And yeah, I think from my side, that's about 20 minutes now, so it's a good time to start rounding up. We see drones as a game changer in disaster management. I think it's just really important to understand that in order for drones to be effective, there's a lot of training that needs to happen and SOPs that need to be in place. and the right equipment needs to be used for the right job. And yeah, at Autonomous Sky, we are a training and manufacturing organization. We offer all of the drone courses, from RPC all the way to instructors, and even the technician course. We take training quite seriously, and we have a different approach to training than lots of the other ATOs, in the sense that we try to give you the training that will actually be effective when you're out on the job that you're going to do. And on the manufacturing side, we are working on some newer technology, which there isn't time to quite delve into right now. But there is an open invitation if you want to come and visit and see what we are doing. Be happy to take you through that. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time and the opportunity. I hope that was informative. And I'll hand over back to Brad. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Amit. That was an amazing journey you took us on in understanding with some of the amazing work that you're doing, and well done to you and everybody at Autonomous Sky. I liked your metaphor of using superheroes, and just some of the things that struck me as you were talking was around the speed of drones, the ability to avoid dangerous situations. Very often what happens in emergencies is that more people get injured and killed whilst responding to people that are in danger. The ability to cut through and see things that humans can't necessarily see, flood monitoring. These are just some of the things that I suppose we never want and we never hope for, but we've got to hope for the best but plan for the worst. And very often technology like this comes to our rescue when the worst situation arises. And I've been to your factory several times, and I would echo your invite. I think it's really an amazing opportunity for anybody to go and see what Autonomous Sky is doing. And I would, if anybody wants to come via me, I'd gladly refer you on to Amit and direct you down to their manufacturing facilities in Pardon Island. So Amit, thanks once again for your insights, and we will take questions at the end. But I did want to ask you one thing. In your presentation, you talk about, I think it was K-line technology. Just explain to the audience what that is.
Yeah, the K-line technology, that's very much the sensor that we've been working with the CSIR on. And it was all about trying to identify the light signature of potassium that's burning in wildfires. And so this sensor is not a thermal sensor. The problem with thermal sensors is that you're going to get lots of false positives, especially on hot days. And it's not an infrared sensor either. It's a patented sensor that our scientists have developed here in South Africa at the CSIR, especially for spotting these fires nice and early.
Thanks so much for that comprehensive response. Matthew Rosenberg, I see your question. We'll keep it till the end. So Matthew, I've noted your question, and when we get to Q&A at the end, we'll put them to Amit. So Amit, thanks once again. And if with everybody's permission, I'd now like to move on to our next speaker, Anas, all the way from Japan. Welcome to the online session, Anas, and thank you so much for agreeing to work overtime in Japan. Ladies and gentlemen, Anas is a really interesting gentleman to listen to speak. I hope that he shares a little bit more than just talking about drone technology and advanced aerial technology. He's been involved in some very interesting situations in his life before. So if there's time at the end, Anas, I'd like to invite you just to share with the audience what you've done and what you've been up to. But Anas from Gift of the Givers Foundation, welcome, and please start with your presentation.
Hello, how's everyone? Thank you for inviting me for this. I really appreciate your invitation and all your efforts to make this webinar happen. So also, I'd like to thank Amit for the nice presentation. It was so informative, and it shows how much they know about disaster conditions and the possibility and potential for using the drones in order to save lives mainly. Let me start with my presentation here. I shared with you. I will talk about the role of drones in the humanitarian sector, the current state and the future opportunities. First, I will talk in general about Gift of the Givers Foundation, and I believe most of you, if you are all in South Africa, you know about Gift of the Givers as one of the largest humanitarian organizations from African origin. We have worked in about 47 countries around the world, so with different conditions. Since we started our operations in 1994 till now, there is so many tools that we developed, and also people, the humans start to use in order to reduce the number of victims during the crisis time. So our main priority is to keep catching up with these tools in order to make our humanitarian interventions more feasible and save lives. So this Gift of the Givers Foundation. And then I will speak about the main thing, which is the core element of our work, which is about what makes the successful humanitarian assistance, what is make it successful, and what is also impacting it negatively. For example, we get a call to intervene in outside South Africa, in Mozambique. We're getting a team from South Africa, qualified team, but the problem there, we are operating in an area that we don't actually get used to. We don't know the geographic complications and sometimes the political complications in the field. So one of the technologies that we want to use is the drones beside the helicopters, and also in the rivers that we are using for to deliver the humanitarian assistance. So the first, we have to focus on the rapid development for our resources and reach we call it the golden hours. So whenever the disaster occur, we have golden hours. The earlier we are there, the more people we can save, the more people we can take them to a safe place in order to prevent any additional harm for them. So the coordination with people on the ground, with the government, is also one of the key elements. And I will talk about how Africa still the regulations is still preventing Africa in general to get more advantage of these technologies, because there is no legislations openly allow the drones to fly in many countries around Africa. So one of the things also we hope to use the drones in near future is the communication. The communication is a serious challenge in the disaster area. So sometimes we're losing some of our teams, we're losing communication, and this has cost us a lot of time and efforts in order to reach them and focus on our main priorities. So working in the land that we don't get used to, losing communication. At sometimes we change some of our plans in order to have all our team in a one place, that to focus our efforts to save in one area. And instead of working in several areas, then we focus in one area, because we cannot deploy our teams in different locations. Then we lose the communication with them. So communication is one of the key factors for a successful humanitarian response. The local engagement, when we reach to some areas, we have to make sure that the local people, they are there to help us with the information, mainly also to instruct us about the scale of the disaster, and also the complications with the humanitarian accessibility to certain areas. So the flexibility from the government also is required. Preparedness, and this is one of the key of the reasons why I'm here in Japan, because in Japan they're working very hard on a subject called disaster reduction. Disaster reduction is how much we are prepared for disaster before it happened. So, for example, a hurricane come through Philippines to Taiwan, and it killed like 600 people. But when it comes to Japan, it killed only 2 people. Why? Because Japanese people are they have the disaster reduction concept, and it's just like the method that they are using to reduce the number of victims within the country itself. So also they started to cooperate with other countries, surrounding countries, through JICA. in order to help these countries to be well prepared also for the disasters. Because with the climate change, even we experience this in South Africa, we have repeatedly the same disasters, floods, drought, and so on, again, every year, and sometimes in the same areas. But we can do something in order to reduce the impact of these disasters, because it's repeatedly happened and repeatedly cost us a lot. And this is what we can understand it in the context of fragility. Africa in general is so fragile when it comes to resilience for the disasters. In Japan, they have Fukushima. I was there. I visited the site in Fukushima where there was a nuclear leak in that site, and I see how they professionally they deal with this disaster, and also the earthquake, the earthquake and tsunami, and Resin Takatana. This was in 2011, and the city is completely rebuilt. We don't have the ability and capability in Africa in general to be that the resilience for when it comes to rebuild the disaster. So instead of dealing with the damage, we have to deal with the preparation in order to reduce the damage at first place. So one of the things that we are working here, you can see the barriers of expansion of the drones technology. I focused mainly in Africa, and we can see there's only 5 countries that they don't allow the drones, but there are also about 8 countries. They don't have any regulation so far to deal with. We don't know by law if it's allowed or not. But from our experience in all these countries, when there is no clear regulation, the answer is no. So we have so many countries, they still have the potential. But first, in order to pave the way to use the drones in these countries, for example, when we have intervention in Congo or South Sudan, and now we are working in the north of Sudan also, using the drones and the new technology, even getting them into these countries is a serious challenge, because they don't have like a clear order by law to allow these equipments into the country, or because of the security restrictions, they don't simply they said no, they are not allow you to use this kind of technology. So we hope Africa also get more and more African countries involved in allowing the drones, because in order to get the potential and also to strengthen their resilience against the disasters. In general, also we have one of the things also, we don't have the infrastructure in so many African countries for the drones and for the general technology as well. So there is a potential for South Africa to be the hub of this technology, to distribute it to whole African continent. And also when it comes to understanding the importance of this kind of technology is not easy unless they see it working. So Africa and South Africa in general, as we are working more in this technology and we show African countries that we start to using it more and more, will motivate so many African countries in order to allow this technology into their countries. So we have more expectations from the drones in general, because we are using this technology. We are not developed this technology. So we hope that the biggest drone that I witnessed here in Japan, it can carry up to 50 kg, but still not enough, because at this point you need to have more drones, which means more funding, and also we need we cannot send other than some medical supplies and some certain items that are not heavy enough. So we hope that we can get drones that it can carry more payloads. And also, for example, in Turkey, when we went there during the earthquake in Turkey, the dogs in South Africa did a great job. It was one of the best of all the relief item, the humanitarian teams that were on site. But wasn't enough because the damage was huge. So we used to send the dogs to some areas. Then we prioritize. Every day, with every day, we know that we cannot maybe find people still alive in certain areas. So we delete these areas. And we believe maybe there is a still number there, but we can find more in other locations. So that's why if we have this technology of drones, we can have 24 hours of assessment for more sites. And if we can use this technology in order to track the living people under the rebels. So it is very important to use this technology also to link our teams together by communication. And also, we hope that if we can also develop the drones in order to use it in a public health surveillance by conducting area surveillance for disease, outbreak monitoring, and vector control. So in Japan, they are using some of this technology in order in Corona time, in order to check in outside Tokyo, the gatherings of people, whether there's a people with a high temperature degree. So it can see they're using these sensors in order to track who's affected and who's not in some certain areas. But it was all part of their research because in Tokyo they have BOSAI, which is abbreviation for a Center for Technology Research for disaster and humanitarian assistance. So they're using this kind of research, but there is no actually outcome for this research so far, if it's successful or not. So one of the things that I want to show you also is this video, which is part of, let me show it to you here. It shows about how we can use the drones in terms of evacuation. We can use and also to instruct the people during what they call it, the disaster, to reach to the safe area. So I will show it to you just now.
Confusion during evacuation is also a risk. It can lead to panic, and people may die from being crushed in a crowd. To project text or images in the air, they use one drone equipped with a laser projector and another drone equipped with an aerial screen. These signs are used to guide people to a safe place. The research team is the first in the world to attempt this. The first test was conducted.
This is the first one, and the second one also. It shows how we can take pictures for safe
This
area.
image was created by stitching together multiple photos taken by drones with correction for distortion. It's called an ortho image. It's a composite of over 100 photos. Not only can you see the damage over a wide area, but if you zoom in, you can also see details such as roads covered in dirt, as well as people. This system, developed last year, has a special feature.
電気揃って動きます。
The 5 drones are linked and move in unison. This enables the team to take photos of a large area quickly and efficiently.
So Japan developed its own, what they call it, way to deal with the disaster that they are facing. And as a research in Africa, for African countries, we have to develop our own also in order, because there is a difference between what Japan is facing and what Africa in general facing. We are not like there is no that earthquake as we witness in Japan, we have in Africa. So with some differences, we have to understand the differences, also the potential in the same time, and how we can use this technology in order to save life mainly. The sad thing is if we don't use enough technology, and it is open for anyone to use if there is a will also from the government to fund more research, and because it's costly to funding this kind of research. And if South Africa, they lead the efforts for this, it can also help so many African countries. And we are coming to more mainly natural disasters because of the climate change. This is one of the factors that it's also will affecting the whole African continent. This is some of the lessons. I think Amit was talking about the same technology that we are using for tracking people and instructing people. This is also extra feature that they are using in Japan to help the people in order to reach to the safe way. Because in Japan, they have a belief in the government will come to help them. I was there in Rokin Takatana in Japan, and they saw people, they were waiting, and they got already the alarm from the government and to leave that, to evacuate. But some elderly people, they didn't leave because they can't, and they say, we believe the government will come and take us. So the government is more liable toward its people because of this kind of relationship. And indeed, they did reach to them, but also not all of them. And this has cost them about 2,500 people. They were dead in this disaster. So even now, the government, they keep informing people. We appreciate the trust that you are giving to us, but also you have to do your part during the crisis time. So in general, in Africa, I hope that the current crisis that we are facing and the climate change and what this might bring to us for more and more disasters, we have to be more resilient, and we have to examine our resilience, and also we have to work on disaster reduction concept and using all the possible technology in order to be as strong as we can to reduce the damage and the victims of the humanitarian crisis. And as I said previously, we don't develop this kind of technology, but we're relying on the research and companies that are working to develop a new technology and bringing the new technologies into work. And we can, from our side, we can examine this and work closely with all the research and companies that who want to examine this technology, to examine it in the field. And then together we can make a more tangible thing to help the people and make Africa a better place. So I hope that makes sense for all of you. And thank you so much again for inviting me for this webinar. Arigato gozaimasu. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Anas. That was a really, really interesting presentation. And perhaps in a way, partially completing the circle. Congratulations on completing the circle between what you are talking about and what Amit was talking about. And just a couple of things that struck me in your presentation is not so much about the technology, but more about the need for the public and government to be educated about how drone technology could be transformative. And in the absence of policy, there is confusion, and it is a concern to see how many countries in Africa have no position on the use of drone technology. And yeah, I saw the comment that was raised by Francois Barwise around the technology needing to be underpinned by enabling legislation. So how do we make sure that that technology like this can be deployed as effectively as possible within a enabling legislative and policy environment? And perhaps there's some work that needs to be done around that, because, as you said, it's hampering people's ability and costing lives. And so I think that this is something, maybe somewhere some work needs to happen. Once again, Anas, thanks so much for your insightful presentation. I really enjoyed it. And I'd now like to move on to Dr. Johan Minnie. Johan, are you ready for your presentation?
Sorry. Thank you, Brad. I'll just display and then I'll share my screen.
Thanks so much.
Now I must just get back to. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, thank you. So thank you very much for the opportunity and the invitation. It's good to be involved with the UKZN again after many years. Deep in the early in the 2000s, I was helping with community-based disaster risk assessment lectures there with the University of Twente. But it's good to be here with you, and just going to talk about what we know so far in terms of the use of drones in disaster management as per our experience at the City of Cape Town. Just a disclaimer is that the contents of this presentation does not necessarily reflect any official positions of the City of Cape Town. So drones are useful in every part of disaster management, and as the speakers before me indicated, there are disaster management is not only response. So in establishing integrated institutional capacity to deal with disasters, in assessing disaster risk, in reducing disaster risk, and in response and recovery, disaster drones or UAVs can very much very useful. Even as enablers in terms of supporting information management and communication, of course, is already said, and in training public awareness and research. And in, yes, that last enabler there, funding, is of course the thing that really makes the world go round. So just in terms of the wide variety of drones that's already out there and the many use cases, from our side, we can't wait to see what's next, because we're sure there's going to be a lot of interesting developments still in this field, and a lot of positive uses for disaster risk reduction coming up. So the scope of this presentation, I'll just basically look at drone technology, but there's a few points I'll make, and I'll come back to this exact slide right at the end of the presentation. So just a few use cases. So rapid assessment and surveillance. On the right-hand side, you can see on the top a flooding situation in Solaris Pass village in Cape Town in September last year, with a mudslide that came down the slope and affected those houses there. So damage assessment is a very useful use case. Situational awareness is very important. Real-time aerial footage provides the coordinating structures like a joint operations center or a disaster coordinating team or an incident command post or a multi-agency coordination command center, and the responders with situational awareness and helping them to make informed decisions on where to allocate resources. And of course, search and rescue operations, very well known. This is our Western Cape Emergency Medical Services, their drone unit operating for a missing person, and locating lost persons and directing rescue teams. All of that is, of course, very much useful with drones. So this, in this case, you can see the rescue or the search happening here, and the pilot is standing here. The drone is there where the arrow is, and you can see the normal operation next to a road in terms of a search operation and drone operations. Other use cases, mapping and planning, especially 3D mapping. It really helps us to create detailed 3D maps of disaster-stricken areas. It supports us in planning and execution of recovery efforts, and including the reconstruction of infrastructure. And flood monitoring. While the flooding is happening, you can look at your canals, you can look at your rivers and the levels there, and you can predict potential breaches in real time and allow for timely evacuation. And then flood mapping, the mapping of flooding high-risk areas. This is in terms of risk reduction. Once you know where your high-risk areas are, and you can really visually depict them and share them with other people, it makes the discussion about preventive preventative actions and mitigation just that much easier. Other uses is training and simulation. So this is a on-site or a mobile joint operation center vehicle, and the drone photography, the drone footage you can see is displayed in this vehicle. And what we can see here is the intervening team at the major hazardous installation, and this is the safety and risk officer of the specific facility. And as part of the training and as part of the exercise, that visual from the site is, of course, extremely useful. Some other examples, and this is a video that I'll just show. This is a service provider that assisted us with an initial trial use of a exercise in 2019, and just some of the positive points that you see from this is the ability to, from a distance, identify hazardous materials, and even the placards on a vehicle, to make it possible to shape your response in terms of what you can expect on the site. So that kind of situational awareness is extremely important. What it also, in terms of this situation, they also use infrared, which or thermal imaging, which gives you an idea where heat is and where the major attack should be happening. And this relates to any incidents of fire. So our fire colleagues would be supported by this. You can see the wheels are very red there, the brake discs from moving to the site, but there's no real fire on the site, so you won't see that. And then just really being able to look at the situation surrounding the site. This is an exercise again, but now from this tethered drone, you can see what is happening in the area. You can see the response happening. You can see if there are any issues in the surrounding area. And one of the learnings from this is, of course, that for our vehicles, we actually should have good numbering on the roofs and so on, so that we can it's easier to know exactly who's on scene. So just an example there. Whether you need to have your own drone or whether you need to fly or ask someone else to do it is a question. And for disaster management in 12 months, using the transversal tender that's available to the City of Cape Town through our good colleagues at EPIC, who manages it for us in safety and security, we in disaster management had 25 missions in 12 months. So a lot of missions, but I don't think enough to make it necessary for you to have your own drone and your own pilot and your own equipment and so on as a department. But if we look at safety and security as a directorate in the City of Cape Town, in 12 months there were 326 missions, and you can see per quarter the number of flights, and this is every time the drones go up and when they need to come down again for a battery change. So 397, 690, 941, and until the 23rd of this month, as Matthew Rosenberg indicated to me, 581 thus far. So a lot of things happening for the Safety and Security Directorate, and perhaps then it becomes more viable to have your own resources. Use cases, just more use cases. This is from the Garden Route District Municipality, of course, the George building collapse. This photography comes from the Garden Route District Municipality itself in its news releases. I've been watching the report backs of guys like Gerard Otto, who's the disaster management head for Garden Route District, the municipality, George Municipality, and Colin Diner from Provincial Disaster Management Centre. And the fact that drone technology was available from the South African Police at the site of the incident made it much easier to have a good situational awareness for that site as well. Other use cases is event safety management, where you can monitor what's happening in a specific enclosed area, and you know where exactly your hazards and your risks are developing. And I'll just go straight on to impact assessment again, infrastructure affected. So this is a Eskom substation on the N2 in Somerset West, affected by flooding again September last year. And that was a big issue with resultant outages. And one could look at the river coming past there, but also identified these informal structures here and the people that were in need of evacuation and assistance in that area. So having the drone in that area made the situation very clear immediately and enabled response. Then this is just an illustration of how the drone cannot be used alone. When you have a hammer, everything looks like nails, and you think that everything must be used by utilize the same technology. So on the right-hand side here is a site of a fire from a surveillance camera on an aircraft, and you can see the helicopter there going in for the attack, and then it switches to normal to another range of light, and you can see the helicopter dropping it. This is from the aircraft. This on the left-hand side is a picture from a drone, but other things that you would also use is a body cam, dash cams, mobile CCTV, static CCTV installed across the city. And then to go further away, then GIS and satellite technology would also be useful. So not the drone alone. You need to use a mix of technologies to be aware of what's happening. Then, of course, all of that goes to a joint operations center or a disaster operations center. And although these pictures are from peacetime operations with not a lot of people in the room, you can see obviously that in these rooms, you will be able to look at what's happening and have a good ability to sum up the situation immediately. So the outcomes of using drones for us is enhanced situational awareness, rapid assessment that is enabled, improved search and rescue operations, accurate mapping, and enhanced data collection. But that situational awareness, the top point is quite critical. So some successes, Simonstown, the mapping of the footprint of a fire there assisted in identifying a crack on the mountain, which then led to measures put in place to prevent a collapse onto nearby roads. We've used it in informal settlement fires, mapping and assisting and guiding fire teams, and also counting the structures affected. And flooding in the city, provided an overview, and services were directed based on the severity of the floods, and then reducing risk in informal settlements. Information provided to the informal settlement management helps them with relocations of persons in high risks, and for us to prepare for winter. Learnings, coordination with ground teams can become complicated. It needs to be effective. Data integration is very important between all these streams of consciousness or streams of information coming in. You need to integrate them and to get a comprehensive picture. Provision must be made for storing and managing and displaying that information. Just having the drone flying and collecting the information on its own is really only the start of the journey. And it's also important to have appropriate equipment to display the live information. A live streaming platform is essential. And for disaster management, the model of multiple services together using an external service provider has worked very well. As you can see, that difference between 25 missions for us, while our directorate as a whole had 326 missions over the same period. So just operational models very quickly. We know that there are considerable compliance considerations for use of drones. And the private use is just not viable for disaster management. So we need to go further than that, just the private use case. And we know there's all these kinds of different operational models where you can go non-profit or corporate or commercial in terms of South African legislation. And it gets very complicated for various reasons and various good reasons. So the fact is that buying it is not flying it. So having a drone doesn't mean that you can use it. You must license the drone, you must license the pilot, you must license the organization and the system, or the air service and the system. And there are limitations. Batteries need to be recharged. And of course, air traffic navigation services will always determine whether you can fly or not in a specific area. So there are limitations which you need to work around. In terms of the operational models, this thing about being an informal owner-operator on a private ticket is just not feasible for disaster management. And in terms of these options, the one of contracting out, where we give taskings to a service provider and then during the operation can put in operational requests, that to us is more an outcome focus in terms of drone use. And that has been more practical for us as disaster management within the city of Cape Town. So summary and conclusion, drone technology is impressive and the use cases are extensive and all the new technology is very exciting. But legally, not everyone can or should fly a drone. There's a barrier to effective uptake, but at least it discourages dangerous free for all. If you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So you must know that drones are not the answer to everything. We can use it in concert with other technologies. Then the operational models vary from own and operate to contract out. There's no one size fits all, but the own and operate model will take time and money and requires dedicated personnel. Then the private sector we know is more agile than the public sector in adopting new technology. But the eagerness abounds from even the private, from us in the public sector. And we really want to look at new technology all the time. Who flies the drone is less important than how you leverage the capabilities and outputs of the drone to us. That's what you need to look at the product. And then the use of a transversal tender for drone technology has become an important part of the operations of the City of Cape Town Disaster Management Center, and it has provided considerable enhancements in operational effectiveness for us. And that is my presentation. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Johan. Thanks for a very visceral and close to home example of how drones are being put to good use in the Western Cape. Yeah, and I think just some of the things that jumped out at me is around the appropriate use of data. So much data is now being generated. We now need to put it to good use. And how do we create learnings and share data with so for example, could data be shared and learnings be shared with the City of Cape Town and gift of the givers, for example, just as by way of taking a very real one for now. And also just the understanding of an operating model, because I think that, as you said, the drones are expensive. We need to work out what the economic impact of having a drone facility is in saving lives, avoiding lives lost, and so on. And so measuring economic impact of what drones present to us in terms of technology is important. And lastly, from my side, a confluence of technology. So it's not just drones. You need to use it in combination with other technologies as well, which is really, really important. So thank you once again to Johan, Amit, and Anas. We're now getting towards the kind of end of our webinar this morning, and we're going to move on to our Q&A session. I have been monitoring some of the questions and comments that have been coming through. So I'm just trying to find my way around the screen here for a second. There was a comment that was made, I think, by Johan Barwise around the need for enabling regulation. And so, Johan, you come from government, but you're at the delivery end of government. What can be done in terms of making sure that drones are not misused? There was a question raised earlier in the chat around how technology is being used to invade privacy and so on. I know that you've touched on it, Johan, around making sure that there's proper licensing of people, proper coordination and legislation that gets applied and complied with. But I think Francois raises a good question around the paucity of regulations. Are there, between Anas, Amit, and Johan, are there any takers to that question?
I might just respond there, Chair. So the drone flights, if the operator or if the operator is licensed as is required, a drone flight is not approved without approval of civil aviation, and it's also approved by the air traffic navigation services. And when you apply for a drone flight, you also need permission of the owners over whose land you're going to be operating in certain cases, especially if you're landing and taking off. So I think there are enough controls in place. I think the privacy issue comes in with private use, where people actually illegally use drones for what they should not be using it for. And I think civil aviation has a very strong enforcement in that regard that they would try to roll out. Other persons on the call might know more about the legal issues than myself, but I think it is mostly under control. In terms of safety and security, I don't think there's any issues with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think your comment, I mean, I think if just a comment about, someone raised a comment about invasion of privacy. If your privacy has been invaded, you can well as assume that that person that's operating that drone is not doing so legally. I think that's a fairly safe assumption to make. And if they are flying legally and they're invading your privacy, then they're not aware of the regulations and restrictions that apply. Amit, your comments. You're an ATO. You provide drone training. Just your comments.
Yeah, look, I think maybe if I could just dial it, to the disaster management scenarios. Most of the guys like Metro EMS and these guys have acts in the regulation that also supersede a few things. So they don't always need landowner permission and that kind of thing to operate. And I think from a regulatory perspective, we are on a journey. And I think maybe more needs to happen around organizations taking CAA and ATNS through a journey, displaying the safety cases, how the tech can be deployed, and kind of promoting the legal use of drones. I don't think there's enough happening on that front, and I think you find CAA and ATNS kind of sitting there waiting for the industry to move and just show how they can bring the technology to operate more effectively in these kind of scenarios. As far as private use is concerned, I think there as well, it becomes very interesting because you also have the unregistered drones that hobbyists can use for their own goods, and there are regulations that limit what can be done, with your own personal drone. And I think the future is going to be kind of convergent and divergent. Like, I think it'll become more divergent for disaster management and more convergent for private use. And it will have to be, because drones are pretty powerful. And when you really need them to be used, you can't have missions jeopardized by private users or kind of cowboys in that kind of space.
Yeah. Amit, while we've got you speaking, there was a question that was raised right at the beginning of our presentation this morning around the endurance and range of your drones. I think it was Matthew Rosen that asked that question.
Awesome. Yes, I think that's a great question. I was looking forward to answering it. One of the advantages about developing some of these technologies locally is that we get to look at problems like this and solve them. So we are looking to solve them using mesh networks, and being a manufacturer, we have that capability to bring in different radios and more effective channel hopping and that kind of thing to overcome some of the congestion, especially in urban areas. Range is kind of a variable for us, so it depends which transmitter receiver combination we are using. The standard that we use is HearLink, which is claimed to be about 20 kilometers, which you wouldn't normally get, but with our mesh radios, we could really cover much larger distances.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thanks so much for that comment, Amit. Yeah, I think that I'm just looking at some of the comments that are rising in the chat box, and a lot of them relate actually less to the technology. And there's congratulations around the technology. There's a lot of questions rising around legislation and policy and awareness. And I guess the question is, you know, how do we sell the case of drones more effectively? I mean, I think, Johan, I think if we could, if government and the private sector could work together to show what impact drones, positive impact drones are making in disaster management, for example, and how they are saving people's lives. How do you attach a cost to someone's life? I don't think you can. You know, I think that we need to do a better selling job to the public about the effectiveness of drones. And I think what was intimated to by Amit is the need for our legislators to be more responsive to the needs of people on the ground. Johan, any comment?
Yes, thanks, Brad. I'm not sure whether a guy like Matthew, who's on the chat as a participant, would be able to speak as well. He could actually, being in our EPIC department in the city of Cape Town, who they run the drone operations, could comment as well. But from my side, I think we're using the technology, but we can be more effective in using it, and we can be more almost fine-tune it, because at the moment there's things like as soon as for example, a defense force aircraft or a police aircraft is in the air, then civil aviation or ATNS wants us to not fly anymore. So the conflict in the airspace and the understanding from air traffic navigation services in terms of the operating, how a drone would be operated and how it would should not interfere with aerial operations or aircraft operations or helicopter operations, or having that mix of systems in the air and working together. I think that's where progress needs to be made. And then, yes, the emergency use for humanitarian, for emergency assistance to life that's threatened or property that's threatened. I think there can be some more scope in terms of legislation than there is currently for the use of drone technology. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. I think I'm just monitoring what's happening in the chat here, and Francois Barwaz is making some very important comments. I don't think it's necessary for us to share it on the group right now, but Francois sits at a national level, and there's some national structures which I think can be more effectively utilized in lobbying, in understanding, and also just getting sectors to work more closely with one another. I think that if AIA can play a role, what we'd like to do is facilitate connections between government at a national level, government at a delivery level, the technology developers such as Autonomous Sky, and I know there's some others on the group right now who are technology developers who would be interested, and also dealing with NGOs, because they very often NGOs can move quicker than what government can. I mean, haven't we seen this with Gift of the Givers? Is that where governments are incapable of moving swiftly, very often NGOs like Gift of the Givers move in.
I think fundamentally, either NGOs or private sector, they won't move on unless there is a good policy that's motivating them in order to go forward. So the purpose of policy in the meantime, basically, is just to organize the relationship between the government and its people, what it's allowed, what is not, and why. So we need, in South Africa, we can get enough justifications from the government why in some certain this is prohibited or not allowed. But in so many African countries, it's just the way they are preventing or they refusing the policy for the drones or the new technology. It's because of the security concerns. So, and also because they didn't see this technology works on reality. So this is why we need more research to develop our own models in Africa to prove to so many African countries the potential of drones. We have so many countries, they are they can use the drones, and can be like a big market for the private sector from South Africa to work in so many African countries. So as an NGO, we need also to get the support from the government by the good policies to enable us to work and to bring these technologies into so many African countries. We have just a few countries who are saying yes. And even at some point, if there is a good policy, they said they approving this kind of technology, they keeping it hidden, or they don't allow you publicly that to use it because of also security concerns. So for example, in Iran, they banned, it's not allowed to fly drones. But when they lost their president, they called Turkey and they sent drones from Turkey to find their president.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and Piragdar is just like a private company in Turkey. It's not a governmental company. But how this company was created and how they reached to this point or to this level of capability, because the government paved the way by good policies to motivate the private sector. And once the private sector lead the way, the NGOs also will get the benefit, and even the government, because the leverage they get of this kind of interventions is huge. Is a big deal.
Yeah. And I thank you for those comments. I think that there are countries in Africa that are further down the road than South Africa. You take Malawi, you take Rwanda in terms of distribution of medicines and using drones for blood delivery. They're further down the road than what we are, and they've shown the use case of drones. And I think that there was a comment that was raised about where are we with regards to a drone corridor. There is a meeting coming up later this week on Friday, I believe it is, to talk further about the establishment of a drone corridor. We would really like to see a drone corridor being established as a test case for showing the public and showing government and stakeholders in South Africa what empowering impact drones can have on our country. So there's a lot of comments coming through, very positive comments. We will follow up on those. And I know that there's a lot of call for the AIA to play a linking role between role players. So we will certainly take that on board and consider that. And there's some very interesting technical questions that have been raised, which I can possibly take back to the likes of Amit and Johan. So, ladies and gents, I'm just watching our time very closely and guardedly here. I want to make sure that we are bang on time. It's now 10:25. I want to just thank the speakers once again for insightful presentations and also your discipline around keeping to time. So thank you very much for that. And I would now like to just also thank the people that are making comments in the comment box. We will take those on board and we'll feed them back. The presentations and today's session will be put up on our Facebook page and our website. So if you want to go back there, please do so. And I'd now, with the permission of the speakers and the audience, I'd now like to hand over to Dr. Rudy Kimmy, my manager at the AIA. And I'd just like to hand over to him to make some closing remarks and just a vote of thanks to everybody who contributed. So over to you, Rudy.
Thank you very much, Brad, and thank you very much to our speakers. This was a fascinating, interesting, and informative webinar. It came together quite seamlessly, and I really liked the interaction between an education institution like the Aerotropolis Institute at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, the private sector represented here by Mr. Amit Ramdath, the NGO sector by Anas Al-Hamiti, and then local government by Dr. Johan Mini. If only our government of national unity can work in such a seamless way, I think that South Africa will make great progress. So, Brad, thanks for hosting this in such a professional manner. The Aerotropolis Institute, the role of our institute is to educate to inform, to advocate, and to provide a platform for engagement. And this platform is to bring together different role players around aviation, but also in education and economic growth, in a way that we can show the integration and the necessary cooperation and the collaboration. Just in terms of what stood out for me from the different speakers, the entrepreneurial opportunities presented by the Autono Sky. You know, when Mr. Amit Ramdath mentioned about the class-leading winch that was being developed at his company, and it being potentially a world leader. This shows how South Africa can leapfrog and explore very innovative capabilities. And it scaffolds on the fact that our industrialization program that was developed many, many years ago, the likes of Sasol, the likes of Armscor, all this capability is in this country. And we need to leverage this to better effect. I also like the comment made by Mr. Anas Al-Hamiti on the drone reduction approach that is being utilized in Japan. I think this gives credence to the fact that if governments are willing to and intentionally willing to anticipate where disasters might be, then they can better deploy their resources to mitigate those disasters. And I think the Japanese are world leaders in disaster mitigation. So Anas, you're well placed there, and we look forward to some of the skills that you will bring back to South Africa. Johan, living in Cape Town, I think you provided a very good practical overview of the current disaster response technologies that are being deployed in the Western Cape. And good luck to your team. You know, with global warming, the disasters are coming fast and they are more complex, and it requires that local government and indeed national government are better prepared in order to reduce the cost of human life and also to reduce the cost on the economy. Lastly, I'd like to thank the team at UKZN, Hazel Langa, and Radebe, and everyone that's hosting this behind the scenes for always doing such a superb professional job. Without you, our webinars and our online seminars won't be able to happen. And then finally, for our participants, the questions, the comments, your availing yourselves to support, to attend, this is absolutely critical to our success. And hopefully, whatever knowledge we gain and glean from these events, it is important that we spread this far and wide, that we use this to create better lives for ourselves and also to create a better life for our country. So to all of you, thank you very much. Please monitor the Aerotropolis Institute Africa website for upcoming events. Please look at what's happening at the university, and we look forward to engaging with you again in the future. So everyone, thank you very much. Bye-bye.